Welcome back to the garage, everybody. Today, let's talk about what you should take with you when you head out on your adventures. Stay tuned, guys. Welcome to Rhino Exploration. My name is Zach, and today, guys, I wanted to take a moment to talk about what you should take with you when you go out on your adventures, whether it's just a day trip, a weekend, or a week-long or more trip. What should you take with you out on the trail? I bring this up because I have heard a few stories over the past couple of weeks of just from people that have gone out on the trail and they were not prepared whatsoever. They didn't have anything with them that they should have, and for some of them they got into a really tight situation or a really sticky situation that, you know, kind of put them on the edge and made them extremely nervous and anxious and things like that. So I thought it would be a smart idea to talk about this because, like a lot of you on the other side of this camera, they're probably thinking it's kind of second knowledge, you know, you just automatically take these things with you. But apparently it's not second knowledge to everybody. So we're going to take this time and we're going to talk about these things. And what I'm going to be talking about are things that I take with me on the trail. Some of which you may not take with you, and a lot of it you may take with you. But these are what I personally take on the trail, whether it's a day trip or a week-long trip or a several-week trip. They're always with me no matter what when I head out for my adventures. Now, we are in the garage. So, like always, the garage door's open for the light. Lots of people driving up and down the street. There will be noise. I apologize. I can't make it go away. So let's get started. What do you need to have when you go on an adventure? Well, a lot of you are probably going recovery gear, tools, food, water, and those will all be correct things. Those are things that we're going to cover. But there are some other things too, like how about a GPS system for the trails, whether that's, you know, physically paper maps or something on your phone, such as Gaia, Onyx Off-Road, which are both not sponsors of the channel, but having some kind of GPS on your phone, iPad, something that shows you the trails and gives you information. How about things such as extra fuel, certain kinds of recovery straps? You know, all these things play a part, whether you use them or not. When you go on your adventures, you need to have them. So I'm going to start with this story. I was told a story by a friend of mine who, he lives in Arizona and he doesn't really know a whole lot about off-roading. But he had another one of his friends come into town and they rented a 4x4 and went off into the desert. Okay, first off, there's few red flags throughout the story. You'll probably catch them. So they go off into the desert. It is July. So they're out there. They first off didn't have a full tank of gas when they went out there. And I think they went to this area and they found a park ranger and they were asking the park ranger what trails, you know, they could hit, things like that. Because you'll find this a little comical, but they're 4x4. I can't even say it's a 4x4, but I am. It's a 4x4 was like a Toyota RAV4. Yeah, I know. I hear all the wheelies on the other side, don't worry. I said the same thing. But they took this RAV4, and I think the park ranger thought it was really comical that they wanted to take that off, because the park ranger told them, you can go on all sorts of things, especially the wash and over on these trails, and they, being complete novices to everything off-road, said, sweet, and they went ahead. Well, they probably put that RAV4 through some places it should never have gone. I'm just going to be honest. From the story, they took it up hills, over rocks, into the wash. They shouldn't have. Well, they got to a point where they got completely lost. They had no maps of any kind. Literally no paper map, no GPS on the phone, iPad, nothing. And they had no service. And they got to the point where they were under a quarter of a tank of gas. And they're out in the middle of the desert in July, over 115 degrees. And they had no idea where they were. Here's the other red flags to the story. They had no water, no food, no tools, no recovery gear. They had zero, nothing. They just went out. Now, they did make it back okay. They did get to a gas station with like fumes in the tank. And in the end, it was an adventure. They had some enjoyment out of it, but they also were super stressed out the entire time because they weren't prepared. So now you've heard that story. Now you're understanding why I'm doing this, because I've heard two other stories very similar since then, all in this month. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about you, but I refuse to go into the desert in the summertime because it's 100 billion trillion degrees, and it's a place that the devil goes when he wants to warm up. I'm sorry, I don't know why everybody wants to go to the desert in the summertime. It is way too hot and way too dangerous to be wheeling out there. Yes, I know there's going to be a lot of you going, no, I do it all the time. Yes, there are times a day that go wheeling in the desert. I lived in Arizona for 22 years, I know. I used to run through the desert all the time. But as I have now moved and have been away from Arizona for about 8 years now, I kind of refuse to go into the desert in the summer just because it is way too hot. I have gotten a little weak when it comes to over 100 degrees. I'm kind of out. I don't enjoy it. I'm not having fun anymore. But that story led me to, let's do this video. So let's get into it. So let's start with the first thing. Water. When you go out on a trip, you should always have water. And I'm not talking gallons and gallons and gallons upon water, but you need to have water. So for instance, when I go on a day trip, I take 3 of these 40-ounce bottles. They are, insulated. It keeps the water at the room temperature or whatever temperature I put in. But I take 3 of these because on an average day, I drink about 3 of these. Well, when I'm off on my adventures, on a one-day adventure, I drink about 1, maybe 2 of them because I'm typically out, I'm filming, I'm jumping in and out of the vehicle, so I'm thirsty. But I take the 3rd one because I always have it as a spare in case, for whatever reason, I get in a situation and all of a sudden, I've drank in 2 of them, I at least have 1 more that I can use. But when I go on my longer trips, anything longer than a day, I take this with me. This is a 7-gallon water jug. I got this at Walmart and it was like 20 bucks. When I go out on anything longer than a day, I typically take this. Now, it's not always filled all 7 gallons. Sometimes I only put like a gallon or 2 in here and I take it with me if it's a weekend trip. If it's longer than that, I fill it all the way up. But this is all I take because no matter what, on my trips, on my adventures, if I run out of water, I can always stop in town and get water along the way because eventually you got to get fuel. Well, I've yet to be rejected from a place that wouldn't let me fill this up, so I typically fill this back up. But this is what I take with me on anything longer than a day trip. And it works great, guys. Like, it's this nice box, square shape. It fits right where I want it, and it really doesn't move. It gets strapped down with, other things that I stick in the back of the Jeep, and it doesn't move, and it's great. And it's got this little, I know you guys can't see it. It's got this little port. You can, tip it on the side. You can open up the air valve. You can do this. Water, and it's great. And it has never failed me for water. And it doesn't really get too hot in the back of the Jeep. But having water is very important because so many people think, oh, I just need enough for what I drink. And honestly, my rule of thumb is you should have at least, if it's a day trip, you should have at least 40 ounces more than you typically drink with you And if it's a whole adventure, you should have at minimum 2 gallons more than what you use on a daily basis. Especially if you're going on your adventures and they're multiple day adventures, use water for cleaning your dishes, for helping to cook, drinking, things like that. So you typically use more, but I don't see a purpose in having huge gallon, huge water tanks on my rig or taking with me, because it's just a waste, because you don't really go through it in that time period unless it's many days. And at that point, like I do, I just fill this up whenever I stop in town to get fuel. I just top off my water as well, because then I don't have to worry about it. And two, then it's just one thing. It sits in its place, it has its area, and it works perfectly for me. Next, yes, I have my notes so I can stay on track. Next, how about my favorite topic that I did a video on for you guys, recovery gear. Something as simple, and this is just the standard little Jeep thing I got in the back of my Jeep when I got my Jeep. But how about something like a tree strap, toe strap, shackle. A lot of people don't take recovery gear with them still. I don't know why. If you have a winch on your vehicle, that's great, but a winch isn't the end-all be-all tool. You should have other pieces of recovery gear. And if anything, if you just have a winch, and if you had to have another piece of recovery gear, how about a tree strap /strap that you can use to help, either get someone to pull you out, pull yourself out, wrap it around a tree, something like that. At least have a piece of recovery gear with you that is a strap of some sort along with your winch. Because if you're not going out there with recovery gear, and if it's not accessible if you're taking it, then you're wasting your time. Because if you get in a situation and you get stuck, you're screwed. You better hope that somebody's coming along, or you can go somewhere to find signal. Because I don't know about you, but most people typically aren't willing to trot down the trail back to where they had signal unless they're super far into a trail. Then where are you going to go? It's a long walk to get help just to walk back. So have recovery gear with you, because you never know. And yes, I kind of harp on this, and it kind of is, a massive irritation of mine is when people don't have recovery gear, or they don't have a winch on their vehicle and they're going off, off-road, especially solo. It drives me nuts, because I have helped countless people that do not have recovery gear as I'm going along, and it's just like, what was the thought process that went through your head? So I'm not going to keep harping on it. I'm getting off my little soapbox, but have recovery gear with you. Alright, going off of the kind of recovery gear aspect, how about tools? Whether it's a toolbox like this that you're taking with, you have bags with organization for your tools, or a bag of tools that you take. You should take tools with you, because you never know when something's going to break, or something happens, or if you come across somebody and they're kind of in a situation and they don't have the right tool, or they don't have a certain tool because it wasn't something they expected to break. You have the ability to help people, and I've helped people countlessly with my tools because I have them, because I have something that they don't typically have. But when I go out, I take this toolbox. And I do have a bag of tools, but those tools are specifically for certain components within the engine itself, because typically you can't get the bigger size sockets down in certain areas because it's so small. So I have a bag of kind of the smaller tools with my recovery gear, and then I take this with me on every trip. Doesn't matter if I'm planning to hit a trail, this is with me. Because you never know. You never know when something might break, come loose, and you gotta retighten it. And if you have that happen, and it's something that's going to cripple your vehicle, and it would be an easy fix as pulling out a socket or a wrench or a screwdriver and re-putting whatever it is back into place and tightening it, and you're good to go. Otherwise, you could be stranded until somebody comes along, and you better hope they have tools. Now, most people have tools. I know this. I have come across a ton of people on the trail that, you know, they have their tools and things, but I've also come across a lot of people that don't have a tool in sight and it's at home. And they're just relying on the fact that their vehicle is newer to not have issues. I came across a 2022 Dodge 2500 on the trail, and he had kind of become stranded because one of his brake lines came undone. Don't ask me how, I don't know the backstory to it, but one of his brake lines came undone. He was out there, no recovery gear, no tools. So when he waved me down, I stopped, and he kind of told me what, you know, his situation was, and I pulled out my tools and we got his brake line back on and kind of bled it the best we could so he could get his way back down the trail. Like, guys, seriously, take some tools with you. It's as simple as that. Take some simple tools that you can use that fit your rig. Make sure that the tools actually can fit on your rig. Most tools, because most rigs have the same size nuts and bolts and things like that, and so most tools work, but make sure that they work on you. And also, if you have the ability, or you have them, take spare parts, because you never know if something's going to break, or spare bolts and nuts and things like that, because if something breaks, comes off, comes loose, and it disappears, you can kind of replace it. I have a bag, which I'm not going to pull out because it's in the Jeep where I want it, but it is a bag of bolts, spare bolts and nuts, and a few, you know, a few extra little pieces that connect on the places underneath the Jeep, just in case something was to come loose or come off while I'm off-roading and I don't know about it, and then something happens and I find it, I can easily fix it. Next, it all falls in the same. Fuel. Take extra fuel with you. Now, I have this lovely little jerry can. It's not little. It's bigger than a Rotopack. This is a 5-gallon jerry can that I put about 4.5 gallons in. And this jerry can I got off Amazon, and it is, you know, I love this jerry can. It is super good. It doesn't let any fumes out. There's no smell. And as you guys know, this sits in my Jeep because I do not have anything for the back bumper yet to mount it to, or anywhere to mount it on the outside. Yes, I know there are solutions, some of which I don't like. Aesthetically looking, I don't like them. So this sits in the Jeep. I strap it down, and I have had zero smell of gas. Zero fumes, zero leakage, nothing. This thing works amazing, and I've only used this once, and pretty much it was, I got off the trail one day and I could have made it to a gas station, but it was one of those, I was coming off the trail and going downhill, and for those of you that have Jeeps, especially the JLs, you know that once you get under like a quarter of a tank left and you're going downhill, typically Jeeps don't like downhill descents with no fuel because the fuel sumps in the back of the tank. And I was just, the Jeep kept reading 0 miles even though I knew I had fuel in there, but it was reading that, so I ended up, you know, pulling this out, using it, no issue, had no fuel spillage, and then putting it back in the Jeep. But otherwise, guys, I've never really had to use this, but I take it with just in case, and there's been no smells, fuel spills. There's been no, you know, fumes, leaks, anything whatsoever. And I know a lot of people love Rotopacks. Those work great because they are so universal and where you can mount them, and they have a bunch of different mounting points. And I know there's other fuel pack systems out there that aren't Rotopack that you can use. I personally like my jerry can because most Rotopacks, they're like a gallon, maybe 2. And to me, that was, depending on your situation and how you adventure, that's great. To me, that was, I don't know, I kind of got that fuel hesitation of, it's just 2 gallons? What happens? Because I like going out a lot further on the trails and staying out until the last second to get fuel normally. Because that's just how some of my adventures have gone. So, but I love this jerry can, because it just doesn't leak or anything. But taking extra fuel is very important, because like my story I told y'all, they didn't start their adventure with a full tank of gas. It's like one of the #1 rules before you get on the trail. You know, unspoken rules is you fill up before you hit the trail, so you always ensure you have plenty of fuel. But having extra fuel is highly important, because you may run into somebody that needs fuel. You may need fuel. You just never know what the situation is, and having spare fuel it's one of those, it's better safe than sorry, because you never know. It's a lot of you never know. And then the other thing on my list is food. Take food with you. If I'm going out on a day trip, I typically have lunch packed, snacks, I stick them in the fridge, keeps them cold, you know, it keeps everything there, but I take food with me as if I'm going to be out for a day trip when I'm on a regular day. One, I eat a lot. Ask Lindsay, she'll tell you I constantly eat. I feel like I never stop eating, but I'm always eating. But two, I always have more food than I need to with me, because one, I like food, and two, if I get into a situation where I'm kind of stranded or I'm waiting for help, it's kind of like the water. I have extra, whether I use it or not, it's okay. But I typically have it, and a lot of times I go through my food. When I'm on adventuring, I don't know what it is about adventuring, but when I'm out on adventuring, I typically eat. I eat whether I'm on an adventure or not, but I just, unlike my water situation where I kind of drink less water when I'm traveling, I kind of eat as if I'm still at home. So, constantly feeding my face. But those guys are what I find to be what I take with me every time I go on an adventure. Yes, I take more recovery gear. Everything in my video that I did a while back on my recovery gear is what I have with me every time I hit the trail. But these are the things that I take with me every time I go to hit the trail, be on an adventure. They're always with me, because I find that they are so highly important to have with you. Now, if you're going on, you know, longer adventures and you have many nights, you know, you got your camp gear, cooking gear, all that other stuff that you take with you, and it's highly important that you bring everything that you need. But that's all kind of personal to you and your style of how you want to overland and camp. But what I was going over was the basic things that I take with me every time on the trail that I believe everybody should have with them when they step, you know, tire on dirt. Because you should have these things for safety reasons, survival situations, and recovery purposes. It gets a little frustrating when I hear stories of people that just went out there with nothing. And even if it was just an afternoon trip, they didn't take anything. It's like, do you realize what could happen? Because I have seen and heard so many stories and situations where the people were unprepared and they're waiting for somebody. They're in that situation where they're waiting for someone to help. It's important, guys, that you have these things with you. But that is all I'm going to do in this video. It was kind of short, sweet, to the point, because this is what I want to talk about. Because it's, like I said, I want people to realize that you have to take things with you even for a simple day trip. It's not so easy, especially if you're by yourself. Like I do most of my wheeling on my own. It is so important that you have these things with you. So thank you guys for joining me today in the garage. I hope you found this video to be helpful. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We have a goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and you guys are what is going to make it happen. And I love having you guys be a member of the channel. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. If you haven't checked out some of our other social media platforms, the links are in the description below. The journey doesn't stop when I turn off this camera, guys. Go ahead and check out my other sites. I am posting to Instagram and Facebook every day, and it's just updates as I'm going along about my adventures, or showing you footage that I don't put on my videos, because not everything makes it to the video. But go ahead and check those out, guys. If you'd like to help support me on my adventures, go ahead. I have a Patreon account. I have behind the scenes things, waypoints, routes that I have done, They're all on my Patreon account, so if you guys would like to help me, anything you guys wish to donate is greatly appreciated. So go ahead, the link is also in the description below. And I will see you all next time out on the trail, guys. I have several adventures planned, so I will catch you guys then.